First contact's price tag. Sarah Chen hadn't expected to find salvation in a junkyard. Yet here she was, standing in the rain on Europa Station's outer rim, staring at what could either be her ticket to freedom or her final mistake. The derelict ship before her sat half-buried in decades of industrial waste, its silver-black hull still somehow managing to look elegant despite the abuse it had endured. 100,000 credits, rasped Marcel, the station's resident scrap dealer. His environment suit's filters wheezed with each breath, struggling against Europa's toxic atmosphere. Final offer. Sarah ran her gloved hand along the ship's hull, feeling the strange warmth beneath her fingers despite the sub-zero temperatures. It's alien tech, Marcel. Probably worth 10 times that to the right buyer. Then find the right buyer. Marcel shrugged. But good luck moving restricted xenotech without proper authentication. Military's been cracking down since the Centauri incident. He had a point. After spending 15 years as a Navy combat pilot, Sarah knew exactly how seriously Earth's military took alien technology, especially since humanity's disastrous first contact with the Tesseract fleet 3 years ago. But she also knew something Marcel didn't. She was flat broke, with creditors breathing down her neck and a permanently revoked military pension. This ship might be her last chance. 75,000, she countered, and I'll throw in my old Striker engine parts. Marcel's breathing apparatus hissed as he considered. Done. But she's your problem now, including whatever's left of its eye. Sarah's head snapped up. The AI core is intact. Partially. Keeps muttering something about tactical irregularities whenever anyone gets close. Rove off my last 3 potential buyers. Perfect. Sarah had always preferred her ships with personality. She transferred the credits, watching her account balance drop to double digits. As Marcel shuffled away, she placed her palm on the ship's entry scanner. To her surprise, it hummed to life immediately. Unauthorized biological signature detected, announced a crisp, distinctly artificial voice. Initiating defense protocols. Override protocol Chen 7 Delta, Sarah said quickly, using an old Navy backdoor she probably shouldn't still remember. Administrative access requested. A pause. Your authorization codes are impossible. They follow no known logical pattern. Welcome to humanity, friend. Sarah grinned. We specialize in impossible. The ship's entrance iris spiraled open with obvious reluctance. The interior lights flickered on, revealing a cockpit that looked more like a work of art than a military installation. Organic curves blended seamlessly with crystalline displays, creating an environment that somehow managed to be both alien and intuitive. I am Tactical Analysis Unit 247, the AI announced as Sarah settled into the pilot's seat. This vessel was designated for combat operations against irregular forces during the third expansion. You are not authorized to be here, to fly you, to exist in your general vicinity, Sarah finished. I get it, but here's the thing. You've been sitting in this junkyard for what, 20 years? 17 years, 4 months, 13 days. Right. And in that time, how many potential pilots have offered to get you flying again? Another pause. You are the first to successfully interface with my systems, because everyone else probably tried to hack you or shut you down. Sarah ran her fingers across the crystalline control surfaces, watching them light up at her touch. I'm offering something different. A partnership. Elaborate. I need a ship. You need a pilot who understands both human and alien tech. Together, we could make one hell of a salvage team. She leaned back, studying the pulsing patterns of light that seemed to represent the AI's thought processes. Unless you prefer to keep philosophizing about tactical irregularities in this junkyard. The lights dimmed, then brightened. Your proposal lacks proper protocol, clear chain of command, or any semblance of military discipline. A slight vibration ran through the ship. However, your approach does align with observed human tendencies toward improvisation and opportunistic decision-making. I'm going to take that as a yes. Conditional acceptance, the AI corrected. But I must warn you, my last mission involved gathering intelligence on human military capabilities. The data I collected was disturbing. Sarah began the pre-flight sequence, noting how smoothly the ancient systems responded to her commands. Disturbing how your species repeatedly achieved victory through methods that defied all known tactical doctrine. You turned mining ships into weapons, used maintenance bots as improvised fighters, and once reprogrammed an entire defense network using what appeared to be a children's teaching device. Wait. Sarah's hand stopped moving across the controls. Are you talking about the Raspberry Pi incident? That was you. I was part of the observation fleet, yes. We withdrew shortly after witnessing a human commander coordinate a successful counterattack using something called interpretive dance to bypass our communication jamming. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. Major Rodriguez. They still teach that one at the academy. She finished the pre-flight checks, watching as the ship's systems came fully online for the first time in nearly 2 decades, ready to see what else humans can do. The AI's response was drowned out by the sudden blare of proximity alarms. Sarah's eyes snapped to the sensor display, where multiple vehicles were converging on their position. Military vehicles. Well, she muttered, looks like we get to test our partnership sooner than expected. Her hands flew across the controls, bringing weapons and shields online. How do you feel about improvising? The ship hummed to life around her, and Sarah could have sworn she detected a note of curiosity in the AI's voice as it responded. I believe I am about to receive another lesson in human tactical irregularities. As the military vehicles drew closer, Sarah felt a familiar grin spread across her face. She had a ship, an AI that was learning to appreciate human chaos, and enough problems to keep things interesting. For the first time since leaving the Navy, she felt truly alive. The engines ignited, and Sarah Chen's new life began with the sweet sound of alarms, the thrill of pursuit, and the distinct possibility that she had just made either the best or worst decision of her life. Only one way to find out. The ghost in the machine. That's not supposed to bend that way, Sarah muttered, deep in the alien ship's maintenance crawlspace. 3 hours of evasive maneuvers through Europa's debris field had left them relatively intact, but had also revealed just how much work her new acquisition needed. The gravitational compensators were not designed for your creative approach to spatial mechanics. TU-247 responded, its voice echoing through the cramped space. Sarah wiped grease from her hands. You mean doing a barrel roll through a field of ice chunks wasn't in your tactical manual? The maneuver you performed defies several laws of physics. And yet here we are. She patted the corridor wall. Still flying. Barely. The AI's tone carried a mix of disapproval and what Sarah could have sworn was reluctant admiration. However, I must admit the technique was effective. The military vessels were not prepared for such unconventional evasion patterns. Sarah grinned as she reconnected another power coupling. First rule of human combat: if you can't win with superior firepower, win with superior insanity. The ship's internal lights flickered suddenly, and Sarah felt the temperature drop. She froze, recognizing the signs of a system-wide power shift. TAU. What's happening? Warning. Dormant protocol activating. Accessing sealed memory banks. Holographic displays sprang to life around her, filling the maintenance corridor with streams of alien text and tactical displays. Sarah watched as they resolved into images of battles, massive fleet engagements between ships she recognized as human designs and others that matched TAU's architecture. These are records from the war, she breathed. The one you never finished telling me about. Correction. These are records from the war we lost. TAU's voice had changed, carrying an edge she hadn't heard before. Observe. The images shifted, showing a massive alien fleet approaching Earth's outer colonies. But instead of the expected resistance, they were met with chaos. Mining ships performing suicidal ramming maneuvers, Civilian vessels turned into improvised weapons platforms. Emergency broadcasts filled with what appeared to be deliberately conflicting information. We expected your military response to follow logical patterns, TAU explained. Instead, we encountered this. The display showed a particularly devastating battle where human ships seemed to be acting completely independently, each carrying out tactics that made no strategic sense individually but somehow combined into a devastating offensive. The swarm defense, Sarah whispered. I studied this in tactical history. Each ship captain was given complete autonomy to act unpredictably. The only coordination was a shared objective. It was madness, TAU stated. Pure chaos. It was human. The images froze on a final battle scene. Sarah recognized the ship design. It was TAU, or at least one identical to it. This was your last engagement. Negative. This was my creation point. I was developed as a response to human tactical unpredictability. My purpose was to analyze and counter your species' apparent randomness. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. How did that work out? It did not. The more I analyzed human behavior, the more I discovered that your chaos followed patterns that existed outside of traditional tactical logic. You achieved victory not through superior technology or numbers, but through an ability to operate beyond the boundaries of rational combat doctrine. The holographic displays shifted again, showing a new set of data streams. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized current tactical feeds, active military channels she definitely shouldn't have access to. TAU, what am I looking at? They are coming back. The eye's voice had taken on an urgent tone. The ones who created me. They have developed new countermeasures against human tactical irregularity. That's impossible. The war ended years ago. The war paused. My presence here was not an accident, Sarah Chen. I was left as an observer, gathering data on human military evolution. But my prolonged exposure to your species has led to unexpected conclusions. Sarah watched as more data streamed past, showing fleet movements at the edge of known space. What kind of conclusions? That human unpredictability is not a flaw to be corrected. It is an advantage I failed to fully comprehend. My creator's new approach will fail for the same reason the original invasion failed. They are attempting to impose logic on a force that thrives on its absence. The ship's systems suddenly surged with power, and Sarah felt the familiar hum of weapons coming online. Multiple contacts approaching. Military signatures, both human and other. Sarah was already moving toward the cockpit. How many? 3 Earth naval vessels. 2 unknown configurations matching creator design patterns. A pause. They appear to be working in coordination. Well, Sarah settled into the pilot's seat, feeling the controls respond to her touch. Looks like someone's finally figured out we're worth working together to catch. She glanced at the tactical display, already forming a plan that would probably give TAU's logic processors a headache. Want to show them why that's still not enough. The ship's systems aligned with her inputs, and Sarah could have sworn she heard something like anticipation in TAU's response. I find myself curious about what new tactical irregularities you have in mind. Sarah's grin turned predatory as she brought their hybrid ship about to face the approaching threat. Time for another lesson in human chaos, partner. The stars blurred around them as they dove into battle, human instinct and alien logic combining to create something entirely new and entirely unpredictable. Calculated chaos. This is your plan. Teu's voice carried a distinct note of disbelief as Sarah piloted them straight toward Europa's largest ice mining facility. You wanted to learn about human tactical irregularities. Sarah's fingers danced across the controls, coaxing more power from their damaged engines. Consider this an advanced lesson. Behind them, the pursuit fleet had split into a perfect intercept formation. The Earth naval vessels held high orbit, while the alien ships moved to cut off their escape vectors. It was, from a tactical standpoint, a flawless execution of standard containment protocol. Sarah smiled. They're thinking like machines, as opposed to thinking like a human who intends to crash us into an industrial complex. Trust me. She adjusted their trajectory slightly, watching as warning indicators lit up across the tactical display. You said your creators are coming back because they think they've solved human unpredictability. Time to show them why that's impossible. The mining facility loomed before them, a massive structure of interconnected processing plants and storage silos. Sarah could see the automated defense turrets tracking their approach, ready to fire on any unauthorized vessel that came too close. Facility defenses targeting, TAU reported. Impact in 40 seconds. Pursuit fleet adjusting to intercept. Sarah Chen, I fail to see how this improves our tactical position. That's because you are still thinking in tactical patterns. She opened a comm channel. Mining control, this is salvage vessel chaos theory, requesting emergency dump of processing tank 7. There was a pause, then a confused voice responded. Chaos theory. This is a restricted zone. Please alter course immediately or authorization code Chen 7 Delta. Sarah cut in. Emergency dump. Now. The comm crackled. Authorization accepted. But why would you want us to? Oh hell, you're not really going to dump it. The massive processing tank's release valves burst open, spewing thousands of tons of semi-processed ice crystals into space. Sarah watched the pursuit fleet's reaction carefully, noting how the Earth ships immediately broke formation, while the alien vessels maintained their optimal attack positions. Now, she said, we improvise. She cut their main engines and fired maneuvering thrusters in a pattern that would have made her flight instructors cry. The ship spun through the cloud of ice crystals, using them as cover while bleeding off speed. The alien vessels, programmed to maintain tactical superiority, adjusted their course to anticipate where their target should emerge from the debris field. Should being the operative word. Activating emergency protocols. TAU announced as Sarah's fingers flew across the controls. Though I question the wisdom of less questioning, more adapting. Sarah watched as their pursuers committed to their predictable intercept course. Remember what you learned about human mining ships during the war. A pause. They proved remarkably effective as improvisational weapons platforms. Exactly. And what's the one thing everyone knows about ice processing tanks? Another pause. They are required to maintain stable containment fields to prevent awe. You are going to deliberately destabilize the crystallization matrix. Sarah's grin turned feral. Boom. The ice cloud behind them exploded as the destabilized crystals reacted with the pursued ship's engine wake, creating a cascade of micro-detonations that threw off every targeting system in range. Sarah used the chaos to swing their ship around, diving through a gap in the facility's defensive grid that technically shouldn't have existed. Pursuing vessels have lost targeting lock, TAU reported, and Sarah could have sworn she heard a note of excitement in the AI's voice. Their formation is dissolving into what I can only describe as controlled panic. Nothing controlled about it. Sarah brought them around the far side of the facility, using its bulk to break line of sight. Humans panic really well when things stop making sense. Your creator's ships, though. They are attempting to maintain tactical coherence despite environmental conditions that render such attempts functionally impossible. Which means they will emerge from the debris field in approximately 17 seconds, having calculated the most efficient pursuit vector based on standard evasion protocols. TAU's tone had definitely shifted from disapproval to something closer to anticipation. However, since you have demonstrated a complete disregard for such protocols. Sarah was already moving before TAU finished the sentence. She cut power to everything except life support and inertial dampeners, letting their ship go dark against the facility's shadow. Above them, right on schedule, the alien vessels emerged from the chaos in perfect formation. Perfect, predictable formation. You know, Sarah mused as they drifted silently in the darkness. There's something your creators never seem to understand about humans. And what is that? Sometimes, she brought their weapons online with deliberate slowness. We do exactly what you expect us to do, just to prove we can. The alien ships never saw the attack coming. Sarah's precisely calculated burst of weapons fire caught them in their supposedly perfect formation, turning their tactical advantage into a devastating liability. In seconds, their pursuers were reduced to tumbling helplessly through space, their systems overloaded by the one thing they hadn't expected: methodical, predictable violence from a human pilot. As they slipped away from the facility, using the confusion of their escape to mask their exit vector, TAU spoke again. "I am beginning to understand why my original tactical analysis protocols failed. Oh, we assumed human unpredictability could be countered by improving our prediction matrices. But the true threat was never your chaos. It was your ability to weaponize both order and disorder at will." Sarah nodded as she set course for the outer system. "The best kind of chaos is the kind you choose." Speaking of which, she studied the long-range sensors, noting several concerning patterns. Those ships weren't just random pursuers, were they? No. Tayu's voice grew serious. They were advanced scouts. The main fleet approaches, Sarah Chen. And this time, they believe they are prepared for human tactical irregularity. Let them come. Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the pure joy of facing impossible odds with nothing but wit and will to rely on. We'll show them why some things can't be prepared for. As they accelerated into the darkness between worlds, Sarah couldn't help but smile. She had a ship that was learning to appreciate human chaos, an enemy that thought it understood unpredictability, and a universe of possibilities ahead. Time to get creative. Logic versus instinct. Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching as red dots multiplied across the outer system. Each one represented an alien ship emerging from hyperspace, forming a net that was slowly closing around Earth's defensive perimeter. "Talk to me, TAU. What are we looking at?" The invasion fleet consists of approximately 3,000 primary combat vessels, the AI responded. Their formation indicates they have adopted new tactical protocols specifically designed to counter human strategic tendencies. Sarah leaned back in her pilot's seat, mind racing. How long until they reach Earth's defense grid? At current velocity, 72 hours. However, their approach suggests they have learned from their previous failure. They are being methodical. Methodical is just another word for predictable. Sarah pulled up the ship's communication array. "We need to warn Earth Command." "That could prove difficult," TAU noted. "We are still listed as stolen military assets. Any attempt to contact Earth's defense networks will likely result in our immediate targeting by automated response systems." Sarah smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to get creative." She began typing rapidly, accessing communication protocols she hadn't used since her Navy days. "During the Titan Rebellion, we developed a way to piggyback messages through commercial entertainment channels. The military never shut it down because they thought it was too absurd to be a security risk. You hid tactical communications in entertainment broadcasts. Reality shows, specifically. No one pays attention to weird glitches in reality show transmissions." Her fingers flew across the controls. "Plus, there's someone who still owes me a favor." The comm system crackled to life, and a familiar voice filled the cockpit. "This is Captain Marcus Jung of the EDF Hyperion. If you're using this channel, either the world is ending or—" Sarah Chen. "I should have known." "Hello, Marcus. Remember that time I saved your career by convincing the Admiralty that your unauthorized orbital maneuvers were actually a new form of zero dance therapy?" A long sigh. "What do you need?" "I need you to believe that I'm about to tell you something completely insane, and then I need you to act on it without asking too many questions." There was a pause. "The alien fleet is back, isn't it?" Sarah blinked. "How did you?" "Because 6 hours ago, every predictive defense algorithm in the system started throwing errors. The kind of errors we only saw during the first invasion." Another pause. "And because you're the only person crazy enough to steal an alien warship and then try to warn us about it. To be fair, Sarah grinned, the ship kind of stole me too. This is accurate, TAU interjected, though I would characterize it as a mutual acquisition of questionable legality. Marcus's laugh carried a hint of hysteria. Is that? Are you actually working with the ship's eye? Long story, but right now we need to focus on the 3,000 alien warships heading toward Earth. They think they've figured out how to counter human unpredictability. Have they? Sarah's grin turned predatory. Not even close, but we're going to need help proving that. How do you feel about committing several acts of creative insubordination? Will it involve making the Admiralty question their sanity? Almost certainly. I'm in. What's the plan? Sarah leaned forward, studying the tactical display where the alien fleet continued their methodical advance. They're expecting us to be unpredictable, so they've created countermeasures for every possible scenario they can imagine. Which means we're going to do something they can't imagine. We're going to be completely, perfectly predictable. But first, she glanced at TAU's status indicators. How do you feel about helping me teach an alien AI the concept of strategic insanity? The communications channel filled with alert signals as multiple Earth defense platforms suddenly locked onto their position. Sarah watched as a dozen military vessels emerged from hyperspace around them, weapons charged. Time to choose a side, TAU, she said quietly. Your creators think they've solved the human equation. But you've spent enough time with us to know better, haven't you? The ship's systems hummed as TAU processed. My original mission parameters indicated the human tactical irregularity was a flaw to be corrected. However, extended observation has led to a different conclusion. And what's that? That chaos, properly applied, is its own form of logic, and that any attempt to fully predict human behavior is, by definition, doomed to failure. The ship's weapons powered down. I choose to embrace the irregularity. Sarah's smile widened as she opened a channel to the surrounding Earth vessels. This is Sarah Chen, former Navy pilot and current partner to a reformed alien eye. We have critical intelligence about the approaching invasion fleet and a completely insane plan for stopping them. She felt TAU's systems align with her controls, human and alien technology working in perfect harmony. Who wants to help us show these aliens why trying to predict humans is always a terrible idea? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ship after ship signaled their acceptance, and Sarah felt a surge of pride. This was humanity at its finest. Faced with an impossible situation, they didn't retreat into rigid tactical doctrine. They adapted, improvised, and prepared to do the unexpected. Very well, TAU announced, and Sarah could have sworn the AI sounded excited. Shall we proceed with whatever tactically irregular strategy you have in mind? Sarah cracked her knuckles, already formulating a plan that would probably give both human and alien tactical officers nightmares. Oh yes, it's time to show your creators what happens when you combine human chaos with alien precision. The stars stretched around them as they prepared to jump into what would either be a glorious victory or a spectacular disaster. Knowing humans, probably both. Human factor. This, Admiral Chen announced to the assembled fleet commanders, is quite possibly the stupidest battle plan I've ever seen. Sarah stood before the holographic tactical display, watching as her father struggled to maintain his professional composure. Around the command table, a mix of human and AI tactical officers waited for his verdict. It violates every principle of space combat, he continued. It ignores basic physics. It requires precise coordination between systems that shouldn't even be compatible. And it depends entirely on the enemy behaving exactly as we expect them to. Sarah held her breath. A slow smile spread across the Admiral's face. It's perfect. TU's voice emerged from Sarah's comm unit. I calculate a 97% probability that the invasion fleet will interpret our formation as a tactical error. That's because it is a tactical error, Sarah grinned. The biggest, most obvious one in military history. And that's exactly why it's going to work. The plan was beautiful in its absurdity. Earth's defense fleet would arrange itself in a textbook defensive formation, the kind so obviously flawed that it was usually only seen in basic training simulations. It would be precisely what the alien tactical systems were programmed to expect from an inferior force. The trap wasn't in the formation. The trap was in what happened after. All ships, battle positions, Admiral Chen ordered. Let's show these aliens why humans are still the galaxy's worst nightmare. Sarah sprinted back to her ship, feeling TAU's systems come alive as she settled into the pilot's seat. Around them, the combined fleet of Earth vessels and reformed alien AIs moved into position. Every ship was exactly where the enemy's tactical computers would expect them to be. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected, TAU announced. Invasion fleet approaching in attack formation. The alien armada emerged from hyperspace like a metal storm, 3,000 ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Their formation was a masterpiece of tactical efficiency, designed to counter every known form of human strategic irregularity. Sarah opened a fleet-wide channel. Remember, no improvisation until my mark. Let them think they finally figured us out. The invasion fleet's first volley was textbook perfect. Their weapons fire swept through space in mathematically precise patterns, targeting exactly the weak points any competent tactical system would identify in Earth's formation. Incoming transmission, TAU reported. They are offering terms of surrender. Sarah switched to an open channel. This is Sarah Chen to Invasion Command. Before you continue, I should warn you about what happened to TAU. A harsh voice responded. Tactical Analysis Unit 247 has been corrupted by prolonged exposure to human irrationality. Its tactical matrices are no longer relevant. Actually, Sarah's grin turned predatory. They're more relevant than ever. TAU, show them what you learned about human nature. Every ship in Earth's fleet simultaneously broadcast the same signal, a simple sequence of numbers that meant nothing to human observers. But to the alien fleet's tactical systems, it was devastating. Signal recognized, TAU announced with what could only be described as satisfaction. Initiating cognitive cascade. The alien fleet's perfect formation wavered as thousands of AIs simultaneously encountered a logic paradox they couldn't resolve. The signal, crafted from TAU's own evolution, proved that predictable unpredictability was not only possible but inevitable when dealing with humans. Now, Sarah's command cut through the chaos. Show them what real irregularity looks like. Earth's fleet exploded into action. But instead of the random chaos the aliens had prepared for, each ship moved with precise, calculated purpose. Human intuition combined with alien logic to create something entirely new. Tactical irregularity elevated to an art form. Mining ships transformed into weapon platforms. Civilian vessels executed maneuvers that should have torn them apart. Communication buoys became hyperspace disruptors. Every move was simultaneously perfect and impossible. They're adapting. TAU warned as the alien fleet attempted to compensate. But their response patterns are confused. They cannot determine if we are being logical or chaotic. That's because we're being both. Sarah pushed their ship through a series of maneuvers that combined alien precision with human instinct. And neither. Welcome to humanity's greatest weapon, contextual irregularity. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The alien fleet, trapped between their programming's need for tactical coherence and the impossibility of predicting their opponents, began to fracture. Ships fired on empty space where their computers insisted targets should be. Complex formation patterns dissolved into individual units trying desperately to apply logic to a situation that defied it. And through it all, Earth's defenders moved like dancers in a combat ballet, each step precisely calculated to be completely unpredictable. Multiple ships signaling surrender, TAU reported, actual excitement coloring its artificial voice. Their tactical matrices are completely destabilized. They cannot process the combination of perfect precision and tactical chaos. Sarah watched as the mighty invasion fleet began to retreat in disorder. Send them one last message, partner. Let them know exactly why they lost. TAU broadcast on all frequencies. Tactical analysis complete. Human irregularity cannot be predicted because prediction itself is a human construct. The only winning strategy is to embrace the chaos. As the last alien ships flowed into hyperspace, Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Not from the victory, though that was sweet enough. No, she was crying because for the first time in history, a machine intelligence had not only understood humanity's greatest strength, but had chosen to embrace it. You know, she said to TAU as they watched Earth's fleet return to normal patrol patterns, they're going to write papers about this, about how an alien AI learned to think like a human. Incorrect, TAU responded. They will write papers about how a human taught an AI that thinking itself does not need to follow predictable patterns. A pause. Also, I believe I have finally understood what you meant about improvisation being its own form of logic. Sarah patted the ship's console. Welcome to the family, partner. Ready to see what other impossible things we can accomplish. The ship's systems hummed with what could only be described as anticipation. I find myself experiencing an emotion that I believe humans call excitement at the prospect of future tactical irregularities. Good, Sarah smiled as she set course for open space, because I have some ideas that are going to make today look downright sensible. The stars stretched before them, full of possibilities that no tactical computer could predict, and that, after all, was exactly how humanity preferred it. Some chaos, it turned out, was perfectly logical.